Welcome, everybody. Just doing a sound check. It's 3 o'clock. We'd love to get started on time, give everybody an opportunity to ask their questions. And let's do it. Everybody, my name is George Atala. It is my pleasure today to turn the microphone over to our union president, J.C. Treader, and our newly elected executive director, who will be saying a few words. As a matter of protocol, I'm going to give them a chance to say a few words to open this up. And then for questions, if we can use the raise hand feature, I will do my best to get to as many questions as possible. We've allotted 30 minutes for this press conference. So JC,
awesome.
It's yours.
First off, I want to congratulate Lloyd, our next executive director. The energy these last couple of days has been fun to watch. I haven't been to a union meeting with this amount of happiness, and it really kind of felt like, locker room feeling after winning a game. I think that joy and passion and pride and feeling of accomplishment was there, and I know the group that was here to make a very important decision for this union and for the membership and for players that will come after us and have come before us. The guys took it very serious and it was an exciting time. So I want to start with that. I'll also kind of dive in right away to some thoughts on what this process has looked like on our end as players. So if I go back to March of 2022, was when we really started talking about this for the first time. We had reelected D to a final term. We were in the process of negotiating his contract, and we went to that rep meeting figuring out what this process was going to look like, with the understanding of the executive committee that was up for re-election at that time. The people that were going to be elected were going to lead this process going forward. And the board, as is their constitutional duty, entrusted that EC to run this process. And we talked about what that would look like. And they wanted a process built around good governance. And our job as an EC is to execute the vision of our board. And we went through that and went and found an amazing search firm in Russell Reynolds, who worked with us hand in hand to teach us what that looked like and advise us on what that looked like and help us execute what the board had mandated the EC to do. And we did that. We hired Russell Reynolds. And I think the first touch point I want to hit is in July of 2022, we held another board call laying out again what this process was going to look like, making sure we kept them updated every step of the way. On that call, we highlighted every step of the process from there on out, the stuff we had accomplished. We also highlighted a recommended amendment of what it would look like to keep names confidential, as the board had asked us to do. And at that time, the board unanimously passed what that process looks like, with the amendment that we would hold names confidential until the day of the meeting. After that, we went to our team by team meetings where we sent an update out of what this process would look like, including that amendment to all players at their team facilities in their annual meetings, informing the membership of what the board had instructed the EC to execute. We went through the season, updating the board consistently, got to rep meeting, updating the board there. And then as we got closer to this meeting and realizing it was going to be a possibility, we sent another all player message highlighting what this search was from start to finish, going all the way back to October of 2021 when D was reelected, to May, mid-May, when we sent the message out by email to all players, highlighting the search, highlighting what the process was, highlighting the amendment that was passed unanimously by the board. And then once we got here, it was, almost like for Game of Thrones fan, like the executive committee, our watch had ended. We had done the work. We had done everything the board had asked us to do. And we came here and told the board, it's on your shoulders now. Our constitutional mandate was to bring 2 to 4 candidates to you all. You asked us to keep it confidential until this moment. And now we are throwing it over to you. And if you guys want to continue the confidentiality, we would love to see it, but it's up to you. And the board unanimously said, we want to keep it confidential. And to their credit, they did it. And I think the reason there was so much pride and excitement, not alone with finding an amazing next executive director, I think looking for the vision of what players see of this union going forward, the players realize how much we're capable of. And we were able to run a process at such a high level as complete player-led process. And leadership matters and player leadership matters. And I think this is something we want to build on and we see as a giant step forward and a template for the future of what our union can do and how important it is to have really strong player leadership. So I want to hit that stuff first, and I want to throw it over to Lloyd for an introduction.
Thank you, JC. And I couldn't be happier and more proud and honored to be the next executive director of the NFLPA. Many of you do not know me because of my corporate experience and being sort of outside of the world of professional sports. But what I'm really excited about is the desire of the NFLPA to tap me, select me as their leader, to really draw upon my 34 years as a corporate executive and bring all of that insight and experience to the priorities of the players' interests. It's going to be my sole mission to advocate and push and lead and drive what is in the interest of the players. Sort of hours since the decision has been made, but I intend to really connect with the players, understand their priorities, and again, establish an agenda that I will lead and drive with the team. But with that, super excited to be here. Looking forward to answering your questions. And just want to thank JC and the executive committee and the board for their support that they've shown throughout the process.
We have a couple of hands raised. So Jim, I'm going to unmute you. Jim Trotter will be our first question.
Thank you, George. Let me see if I can do this. Oh, it won't allow me to undo the video. Anyway, that said, can I do a little bit of house cleaning here first? How many actual player reps showed up for the vote?
We had 30 of 32 teams represented. For some context on that, at our annual rep meeting this year, we had 31 of 32 teams represented.
How many actual players were there to vote?
I think we were at 48, but for a homework assignment, you can count up on the photo if you want to check the total number, but I say 48.
So 48 of a possible 128, correct?
Yep, we need a voting member to speak for their team. So everybody was invited. Some guys, everybody looks at leadership differently, right? So there are some teams that, as the head rep, they look at it and say, I'm the person that goes. I will, disseminate information to the other board members. Others want multiple people. We had some with multiple, 3 reps here, some with 1. It's all how they view their leadership of their locker rooms.
And how many of those did you appoint, JC?
Did I appoint? There was 1 in New Orleans. The board passed a resolution with the priority of how important this search was. If there were teams that were unable to have reps attend, as it lays out in our Constitution, if there's an opening in the off season, the president can appoint a rep as long as the executive committee passes that appointment. The New Orleans Saints could not have a rep show up. They approached me and said, we want our voice heard. We want someone from our locker room there. What can you do? And I said, if there is an opening, I can work to find a replacement. One of the players resigned and they said, we would like this person to be on the board in his place. And I said, that's good by me. And I passed it to the executive committee. The executive committee, some of the members knew that player and played with him and said he's an awesome guy. And he was nominated and passed by the EC. So 1 was, and that was the process. It was an amendment passed by the board because we understand how important it was to have representation at this meeting.
And let me be clear. So it was in July of 22 when the board said, we don't want to know who the finalists are until we are called to vote on the finalists. Is that correct?
That is when that amendment was passed. Yeah. But I mean, the process we had talked about in March about how important confidentiality was, and the goal and what the board wanted the EC to execute was a high level good governance search, which one of the things of good governance is confidentiality. So we didn't talk about that amendment in March. That's when we first discussed it in July, and that's when it was passed unanimously.
Right. So just to be clear, the voting members did not learn of the names of the finalists until this week, correct?
As they asked us to do, correct.
Correct. And so can I ask, how can it be a thorough vetting on the part of the reps if they only learned of the finalists this week? That seems like an awfully rushed process for them, not for you, but for them.
I think the vet word, I think you're missing the mark on using the term vet. The role of the executive committee in this process is to vet and qualify the candidates and bring the 2 to 4 best to the board for the board to pick who the best candidate is. So it is not the job of the board to vet the candidates. It's the reason why this process took 16 months is because the EC did all the legwork to do the vetting and to do the background checks. And to look into each candidate and to interview multiple times. And that was what the board entrusted us as an executive committee to do. Then the board's job was to be here and interview and get to know. And we were not going to hold a vote until the board unanimously was ready to vote. And we waited until that time. Today, this morning, the board told us we were ready to vote unanimously. We held a vote. They said, we're ready. And we went to a vote.
Just 2 more, and I won't hog this, but how many finalists did you present to the board?
Our mandate was to bring 2 to 4.
And you brought how many?
We're not going to dive into that.
Okay. Lastly, why hold the vote in June when many players are on vacation and gone? And as you say, if there are 48 there out of 128, why not do this vote at a different time when players are not out on vacations with their families and whatnot?
Well, I think we saw, I'm proud of the group that we had show up. And I think the guys in that room understood how important this process was and prioritized being here, understanding that they could be other places. And instead they knew choosing the next leader of this union and who's going to represent players going forward is a tremendous opportunity and one of the biggest things the board can be tasked with. So as we talked about it, we started giving notice that this could happen during this kind of dead period between off-season programs and training camp. And we started sending messages out to see who was available and board members started booking up. So again, I think it's important to talk about what leadership and player leadership means in our union. And it's something that I think our board is starting to get a better and better feel of and a better and better passion for. The board entrusts the EC to do work on their behalf and they elect us and they empower us to make efforts to follow their vision. And I want to stop here and give credit to the EC, poured hours and hours into this search over the last 16 months. They tasked me with keeping track of the hours and we were up above 570 and that's not, we have 11 EC members and we meet for an hour, that's 11 hours. That's one. So this EC poured a ton of time into vetting and qualifying candidates. And then the players in locker rooms empower board members to make decisions for them. That's what a representative democracy does. You speak for your locker room and you trust the people you elect. So we had elected representatives here. They made a wonderful decision that, again, I can't speak about how excited that room was. It's going to be a special moment I'm always going to remember. I'm guessing Lloyd will always remember it as well. But it's an exciting time for our union.
Jim, thank you. Appreciate it. Next question from Ben Fisher.
Hey, thanks for your time. JC, just quickly to clarify, you said it was unanimous, so it's 30-0 with two teams not voting?
For the amendment or for what? What are you referring to?
To select Lloyd.
We did not ask for a vote total. So what the board wanted when we got here was that we were going to vote. And as the Constitution lays out, the candidate getting the majority of the board's votes would be the next executive director. We did that by secret ballot. We had a third-party accounting firm here. They tallied the votes and they presented the win.
I see. Okay. All right. My question for Lloyd, looking back at your career, what is the experience or the portfolio item that you feel is most directly related to the work that's coming for you in your new position?
I think at the top of the list is my ability to bring teams together. Over the course of my career, not everyone agrees, not everyone is on the same page. But building a consensus, a prioritized list of priorities, galvanizing, motivating, keeping the team informed about progress, adjustments to what we were trying to do. I have a talent doing that. And I think that's what resonated with the board and why I'm here today. And so again, I'm really an agent of service for the players. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know the players, getting to know what their interests are, what their priorities are, and building a stronger team, if you will, pushing toward those prioritized lists of items.
Ben, thank you. Kaylin Collar from The Athletic.
Hey guys, thanks for being here. I have a question about the gambling policy. So this might be more for JC, but also Lloyd, I'd be curious for, your thoughts on it coming into this role. So it was reported today that there's going to be more suspensions coming later this week or tomorrow. I'm wondering, this is not a collectively bargained policy, as I understand it, but that doesn't mean that the union can't have a voice or say in it. So I'm wondering, what action have you guys already taken, or what action do you plan to take to defend players? Because it seems to be a recurring problem this offseason.
Yeah, I think we can circle back on that. I really want to keep the focus on Lloyd, and don't really, and on hour 3 of on the job. I think we'll push that to another time. I want to really focus on the excitement of choosing the next ED and keep the conversation there.
Thank you. Ben from the Boston Globe, you're up.
Hey guys, thanks for doing this. Lloyd, I see in your bio that you were on the board of GE Healthcare, and I know they've had a relationship with the NFL, the Head Health Challenge, things of that nature over the years. Did you have much of a relationship with the NFL in that role? And do you have any relationship right now with Roger Goodell?
So to answer the second question first, I do not have a relationship with Roger Goodell, but look forward to meeting him when the time is right. As it pertains to GE Healthcare, it is a spun out new company, if you will, of the parent GE that started early January of this calendar year. Prior to that, I was not on the board of either GE or GE Healthcare as a subsidiary. Since its IPO, I do sit on the board and quite frankly, am excited about the possibilities and the opportunities that to make a connection. Clearly, the health and welfare of the players is a priority. And clearly, my affiliation with GE Healthcare, there's a possible link to provide input toward that item. So, but as it relates to the history of GE Healthcare and my involvement, did not start till officially the beginning of this calendar year.
Thank you, Ben. I see here a Kiefer, you are up.
This is for Lloyd. Lloyd, you mentioned this in your opening, that no sports experience over the course of your career. Any apprehension on your part, and then how did this all happen? And were there parts where you were thinking, I don't have any sports experience. Why am I the guy that they're picking? And then why are you the guy they're picking?
Well, to be clear, I was an athlete in high school and through college, so call it a weekend warrior, but I do have sports in my background and in my family. I think in the context of the professional athlete, my opening comments stand. What I was drawn to was really the opportunity to lead a group of individuals through challenges and to bring them together for the accomplishment of specific goals. And I was excited about the possibility and the reality that providing my background and my leadership skills would be attractive to such a group. So though I have a learning curve, if you will, regarding the specifics, I do have a track record of getting up those learning curves pretty quickly with the input and the support, in this particular case, of the NFLPA, the board, the players, as well as the organization. And I'm super excited about being able to do that and to lead that agenda.
Thank you. Mike Florio has entered the chat.
Unmuted. Hello, gentlemen. Lloyd, question about your experience at Booz Allen. In your 34 years there, what work did the company do for the NFL or its teams, and what was your personal involvement in any of that work?
A little historic fact, Booz Allen actually was instrumental way back in the day when the AFL and the NFL were combined. That predates me in terms of any involvement or employment by Booz Allen. In the 2000s, I believe, our then commercial side of the business did analytical work for specific teams that I don't recall who they were. And at that time, I had no involvement whatsoever in that work or in those engagements.
Thank you, Mike. Anything else, Mike? You want to follow up? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, JC, since I have you guys and since George has given me the opportunity, can you help me understand a little bit better why such an extreme level of confidentiality was important in this case and how you would strike that with any potential for transparency so that people would know in advance of the selection process, whether it's other players, the player reps generally, anyone who's got a stake in the outcome of this selection process, who the finalists would be?
Yeah, I think first off, I'll start with good governance. And I think that's been our focus for the last 16 months is this understanding of what good governance is. And when we wanted to run a search focused on best practices and good governance, this is what it looks like. And it was a commitment by all involved, led by the board. Again, the EC works at the discretion and the direction of the board. And the board wanted to run the best process and elected the EC to do that for them. And then again, like I said, we got here, we presented the candidates and the board said, we want to continue the confidentiality. There's no reason that anybody else should need opinions from the media. We talked about kind of how previous processes had run in 2009 and 2015, which we felt were below standard of what we as players should be executing. And we wanted to be better going forward. And again, we felt like this was a stepping stone to prove exactly what players are capable of. And I think there is a very motivated group of players that are ready to accomplish more than we've ever thought we've been able to. And this is a great moment after a really great accomplishment and a really great election of a really great leader for us to do that.
Thank you very much. We're moving along here. We got 4 questions left and time for 4 more. Mike Jones, you're up. Athletic.
All right, thanks for your time, guys. This is your second executive director that is outside of the football family. JC, what was it about that selection that made you all feel like that was the best direction to go? You could have gone inside, you had options, but what was it about Lloyd in not having that background that was appealing to the players?
Yeah, I left this out early on. To be clear, this wasn't what the EC looked for, right? Like when we hired Russell Reynolds, the first thing we tasked them with was interviewing our stakeholders. Our stakeholders are our reps, the executive committee, the staff, former players, former player leaders, other external stakeholders, and figuring out what this job is and what the core competencies of that job is. And then once we put those all together and presented to the board and says, this is what we've come back with as we put together these data results, the board said, yep, that looks right. And then tasked the EC with going out and finding people, casting a wide net, and searching for the best of the best. So, you know, the need to be a former player was not one on those interviews that popped as a priority. And I think when people talk about former player, it's usually in the idea of being able to connect and galvanize a group. And, you know, the board and the EC and players, as we talk to them, those two things aren't exclusive. You don't need to be a former player to be able to motivate and galvanize a group of people. So we were really looking for anybody that was capable of doing that. And we found a great one.
Thanks very much for the question, Mike. We are going to move on to Matt Derrick. Matt, you can unmute your line now. There you go.
There we go. I think we got it there. Lloyd, question for you. I know you'll be speaking to the players and to the membership about their concerns going forward, but during the job interview process, what was your takeaways as far as the critical issues that you're going to be facing immediately that really were expressed to you from the EC and from the board?
First I'd say that the process itself was very similar to every other process I either have led myself as selecting a candidate as well as going through in terms of its thoroughness, the evaluation, so on and so forth. What emerged to me at the top of the list is this is a group of very passionate, concerned leaders, not only for them themselves individually, but for the entirety of the NFL players. And that resonated with me big time. And I think it's premature to get to an itemized list of what all those sensitivities are. There were clearly themes that were common across the board that I don't feel is appropriate to share at this moment, but the energy, the passion, the excitement, leaning forward, wanting to leverage my experience and my backgrounds, be it financial, organizational, what have you, was something that really stood out to me throughout the entirety of the process. So in many ways, not to be flippant, yes, we're NFL professional athletes, but it felt no different than any other professional organization that I would have interviewed with.
Thank you very much. I've got Jason's iPhone.
Thank you, George. Lloyd, one quick question for you, and that is the players have not gone on strike since 1987. And players such as Richard Sherman, who's a member of the executive committee, has said openly that players don't really have an appetite for going on strike. The owners have used the lockout as they did in 2011 and threatened to lead to the last negotiation that was made apparent. How do you get leverage short of going on strike? How do you get leverage heading into the next negotiation, which will probably start somewhere around 2027, 2028, leading up to 2030?
Yeah, that clearly isn't a short question or a short response. And I completely understand why there's interest in my response to that. I think, to be frank, I need some time and opportunity to look at all options. Today, I'm not in a position to say, this is exactly what I'm going to do to create leverage against the players. These are the tactics that we're going to use. I think a thoughtful understanding of what we did in the past, a thoughtful approach to what I believe and the board believes will be effective going forward is the agenda that we're going to pursue. And at this point, hours into the job, if you will, all options are on the table. We just need time to explore that, the pros, the cons, what's been effective. Hearing out from players like Richard Sherman is important to me, and getting a better understanding and context of where people are at. And then it'll be my job to communicate that more broadly to the players with an agenda, with a schedule that really fully articulates how we will approach different stakeholders going forward.
Thank you very much. Mark Maskey, please. You can unmute yourself.
For Lloyd, when you look at the last CBA that was negotiated here, to what extent did you offer your opinions on that during this process? And then what can you say now about, what you think of what was done well during that negotiation, what maybe you would not have done, what you would do differently, some of the trade-offs that were made, the 17th game and things of that nature? How big of that, your analysis of that, how big of that part of that was your process in dealing with the players so far?
What I will say is that it was clearly a part of the process. I think the board, understandably so, wanted to see how I thought, how I organized my thoughts, how I might have done things similarly, differently, and quite frankly, into the future, how would the current CBA and our strategy going forward change. And I think that, as you would expect, would be an obvious question. We certainly got into it. I don't want to share exactly what I said, but I'm here today in front of you. So many of the things that I said did resonate with the board. There were, areas that they pushed back, and that's fine. But the point is that I do have thoughts about the current CBA. I do have thoughts about what we're going to look into going forward. But the emphasis is my thoughts. It really has to be what the players think and what the priorities are of the players. And as I said, my job is to push the players' interest. And so we're going to get into it, as you would expect us to, in a good way, in a constructive way. It's going to be my job to be effective in getting the ball across the line, no pun intended.
Thank you very much. And we've got two last questions. We've hit 3:30, but let's hit the last two questions in the interest of openness and transparency. Jim, I see you're up again, but if you don't mind, I'd like to ask Jory to jump in since she has not had a chance to ask a question, and then we can end with you. So Jory, why don't you go ahead?
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, guys. One quick question, then another. When did y'all first have contact with Lloyd or reach out to him about this opportunity, JC? And the second one is, you've said that good governance is the reason for confidentiality. Can you just explain further why confidentiality is good governance in your mind?
Yeah, I think one, we talked about wanting to cast a wide net. And the way you get very talented people to get involved in a process is if they believe in the process and how it's going to be run. And having names out in the public, I know, again, we did a lot of research back into what 2009 and 2015 looked like. I believe in 2009, we had newspapers endorsing candidates. I think it was like the Wall Street Journal, Sports Business Journal, USA Today, were endorsing candidates. And this isn't for the media to decide. This is for player leadership to decide as our Constitution lays out. So the way the board kind of looked at good governance was the EC's job is to vet and qualify the candidates, bring them to us, and then let us make the decision for what's best for the players. So again, we did that. And I can't speak how proud I am, not just of the EC who did a ton of work, but the board, their commitment throughout, their trust throughout. And then when we showed up here, how dialed in they were and how much they wanted to also be a part of a confidential search that they had brought up. And when it was their chance, they didn't deviate. They had the opportunity to, and they said, no, we want to keep this confidential as you guys have had. And that's great. For the timing of things, I'd have to go back to my notes. Again, we cast a wide net. We interviewed a lot of people from a bunch of different backgrounds. And we did a wide-ranging process and a lot of interviews and a lot of background checks. So I couldn't pull you the date off the top of my head.
Thank you very much. Jim, back to you, and we can close with your last question.
Thank you, George. I want to follow up on this whole confidentiality angle here that JC keeps talking about. JC, what's interesting to me is that when you say that, you're the guy who has fought hardest to keep media out of the locker room after the pandemic ended. So I'm trying to understand, did you use your influence in the office of president to push the other EC members and board members to keep this as confidential as it was?
No, I think you're giving me a lot of credit. I think
there's a lot of power in your office.
I think what players elected me for 2 terms so far is because they know I work for them and that I will do everything I can and put in whatever hours are necessary to deliver what they asked me to deliver. And again, this wasn't my decision. This wasn't the EC's decision. This was the board's decision. That's how our Constitution works. And I think a focus of, if you want to talk about one of my focuses or what I prioritize making sure we follow our Constitution and we follow the structure in which we make decisions. And that is, the power is in the hands of the board. And the board dictates how we do things around here. And as Lloyd touched on, that's why he keeps saying he's going to talk to the board, because the board makes the decisions. They're the ones in the locker rooms. They're the ones talking to other players. And they tell us how to operate. So to your question of whether I pushed players to do it this way, no. the players, as we saw, we just came through a process where the board got involved and had every opportunity to share it and leak it. And they didn't believe in doing that because that's not what we want to be about anymore. That's not what player leadership is in this union. It used to be, but that's history. And we're looking forward now. And we have a new executive director who we're excited about, who has a passion for leading us and working with the players. And we're just, I can't say enough how excited we are to move forward. So no, this was a decision made by the board. I work on behalf of the board. Lloyd works on behalf of the board. Our staff works on behalf of the board. Our executive committee works on behalf of the board.
So I just want to be clear on this. So did the headhunter firm not say to you that it was unfair to put these candidates' names out in the public space for a month, knowing that they are high profile people? And did you not say to the ECM board, we want you to trust us. You're going to know in plenty of time. We'll go through a deep dive the day that you arrive. Did you not say any of that?
Yeah.
You did say.
I don't know. I don't know what you're proving with that statement. We told them that we would give them plenty of time, that we would give them all the information they need. We would do a deep dive, provide all the background information, and they'd have plenty of time to make a vote. And that's exactly what they did.
I'm talking about your influence again. You say I give you too much credit, too much power. But when you say to them, we want you to trust us, you're going to know in plenty of time. That sounds to me like you are presenting a position to them.
Yeah, again, this started from a board resolution that they passed unanimously, telling us that they wanted us to keep it confidential. So, yeah, you're going to trust us. This is what you told us to do. So we are executing what you told us to do. And as we had new board members come on who weren't there when the resolution passed, we were letting them know, hey, as an update, this is what the process looks like. This is how it's going to end up. We are executing what the board asked us to. And the board's been on top of it. And I think you saw the support after the vote happened. You saw the players excited about the process. We somewhat look at this as outside noise. There is no qualms on the board's level. The board who is here is proud of the work that the EC did on their behalf, is proud of the work that they've done. They poured in a ton of hours. We're on calls, getting updates, and then sat in these meetings and really dialed into a very intense interview process. And I'm proud of them for the work they did. I still don't really get the connection on talking about trust.
The connection is this. Did you say that to them before or after they voted on this confidentiality element?
I mean, you're asking me for a quote from whether I said that a year ago. I couldn't tell you what I said a year ago. No, I couldn't tell you what I said.
Oh, because you seem pretty clear on a lot of other details. So it's just kind of surprising you don't remember that one.
Do you remember what you said on July 13th, 2022?
I think something that important I would remember.
I think trust is important. And again, I think what's important here is we just hired a great new ED. We followed a process that our board asked us to follow. And the board continued to be involved and continued to ask us to do this process throughout. We got here and they made the decisions on how the votes was going to take place. They made the decision on them keeping confidentiality. The board is the one that dictates the decisions. We talk a lot about trust. Again, that's what I told you about what our vision is going forward. Our vision is players leading this union. And we had a great EC. We have a great board. I think where we've come in the last 3.5 years is a huge leap. And we know there's so much more work to be done, so much more leadership to happen. And I think we have the right board who have experienced this to take the next step and take that next leap with us.
Yeah, I guess I would just say this, JC. I mean, it's no secret you don't believe in transparency based on the fact of trying to keep media away from teams. So it would not be a surprise for you to say that you would want this process to be confidential. That's all. That's what I'm saying here. And if you can't remember when you made that statement to them before or after the vote on confidentiality, it just raises some questions in my mind. That's all I'm saying.
We answer to the board. So we don't answer to the media. I know you guys were interested in the information. I know this is a dead period, so it would have been great to write a couple articles. But again, that's not what the board wanted. We saw what happened in 2009 and we didn't like it. We saw what happened in 2015 and we definitely didn't like it. So now we had another opportunity to run this process. We wanted to be better. We wanted to be better as players, and we were. And I can't say enough how proud I am of everybody, all players, for this decision, because we have a great new leader. So we answer to the board is my answer.
Thank you, Jim. We're 10 minutes over. I believe we've done our best to answer every question from the raised hands that have come through. We appreciate the passionate dialogue as always. And welcome to Lloyd. JC, thank you, and appreciate everybody joining the call. We'll make a transcript and select video available to you. Thank you very much.